Okay, we're here with the ISX 15 and I'm going to run through the first part of the common rail fuel system. So this is going to be a review of the chapters we've covered in the last couple of weeks, but got our fuel tank up here in the front. So we've got a line coming off the fuel tank here that runs around on this setup to the back side of the engine here, where we have our primary fuel filter. A few things about this filter: it's got a sight glass down at the bottom, so you can see that any water that gets in here will settle in the bottom here where we can see it. It's got a drain here on the bottom to open and drain the water off. You do this with the engine not running. Okay. Now this filter also, there's no fuel in this top section here. One might look at that and think, well, this thing's out of fuel, but that's actually an indicator. When you start seeing fuel show up here in the top, that's actually telling you that that filter is getting stopped up, because as long as it's free flowing, it just filters through the bottom part there that actually has some air trapped here up at the top. But as it starts to plug up, more and more fuel backs up into the top of this, so you can see it show up. So that's an indicator of when that needs to be changed. So don't look at that and say, oh, we got a big air pocket here, that's a problem. That's actually normal for this filter's operation. Around on the other side of this filter, see once again our sight glass there in the drain, but we have a water and fuel or whiff sensor there. The heater would install over here on this side if this had the heating element inside it, like we covered in the previous, I think, chapter 15. So coming out of this primary filter, which is going to be about a 10 micron filter, we've got our fuel line coming down. And now Cummins puts a electric lift pump right here on the side of the engine on the ISXs. This pump only comes on and runs until the engine starts. So what it does is purges any air that might be trapped out through the return, so we don't have any little air pockets that could have accumulated with the engine setting or whatnot. So once the engine starts, this little pump kicks off. So you need to understand that, because you might misdiagnose something and say, well, that pump's not running after the engine starts, but that noise you hear is that pump running. And like I said, it will do that till the engine starts, then the ECM will shut this pump off. Okay. So here's our fuel line coming into it, and then coming out the bottom of it, we go over to our actual lift pump that's on the back of the CP3 or HP3 pump for the common rail. That's the inlet on it. The outlet comes, and it's kind of hard to see, but it goes up into this plate right here that the ECM is bolted to. So we circulate fuel through the ECM plate, which I think was on last week's task sheet. The fuel line comes out of the top of that plate and returns, let's see, into our secondary filter, which Cummins is down to about a 2 micron nanonet material for the secondary filters now, trying to keep it clean enough for the common rail. Okay. So here's our line coming off of the plate into the filter. This is our outlet back around, and this is to the inlet of the high pressure part of the HP3 pump. So this is a 3-cylinder pump. Almost all common rails have a 3-cylinder high pressure pump for the common rail. Okay. Then leaving the HP3 is up here on the front, comes up, and I can't really follow it through all this very well on video, but it winds up right up here at the top, and this is our common rail. It's called a common rail because this has the same fuel pressure coming out of this rail to each one of these injectors. So each one of these lines goes out to the common rail injector. This is a pass-through to get inside the engine to where the common rail injector is at. Okay. So even when you shut the engine off, this rail still maintains a high pressure. It could be all the way up to 37,000 potentially. Now normally at idle we're not that high on our fuel pressure, but still the pressure in this rail will be plenty high enough to hurt you, cause massive bodily injury, possibly even death. So we have to be really careful with common rail. Way back in the day with the diesel engine, if you wanted to locate a misfire, you just crack these lines one at a time and listen to the engine, and when the engine RPMs didn't really change with the line loose, you knew that was your bad cylinder. Do not do this on the common rail system. That pressure can inject into your skin, cause you massive injuries, and like I said, possibly even death if things feel just right. So you do not take these lines loose. If you have to remove one of these lines for service or some of an injector or something, Cummins recommends breaking it loose at the rail and not at the injector line, because they made a little channel inside here for safety reasons, so that if you have to break one of these loose to relieve the pressure, every one of these have this on the rail part itself, but it channels the pressure that's in here back toward the block instead of out toward you. Okay. Cummins also recommends taking this nut and breaking it loose just barely and tightening it back up. The reason is these little paint chips and stuff can get in the fuel system and cause massive damage to an injector. So what Cummins wants you to do is to crack this line loose and tighten it back, and then take some electrical contact cleaner is what they recommend. You could use brake clean as well for like cleaning up brakes, the aerosol, and spray this down really good and get all the paint chips washed away, and then remove the line. They'll also tell you these lines are kind of a one-use thing. Now sometimes they may tighten back up and seal off, but a lot of times they'll leak once you loosen them and tighten them back. So a lot of manufacturers recommend changing out the fuel lines when you take them loose, because of the seal area on the end of the line. It's not replaceable. So just to recap on the safety, make sure you take this loose at the rail, crack it, tighten it back up, spray it to clean it down. That's the first video on the common rail system.